Hi all, thanks for coming to my channel. My name's Kristen, or Quilter Chris is the name of the channel. I'm so glad you're here. So today I wanted to talk about, what do you really need to get started quilting? How does this even work? And there are lots of videos to watch on YouTube that will talk about this, and this is just my opinion. So I wanted to share with you a little bit today about how I got started and what you need to get started. So I got started quilting in 1999. I wasn't very old. I didn't have a lot of money. I was pregnant with my third baby, and internet wasn't how it was now. And so I had a girl and a boy already, and I made a lot of clothes for my daughter when she was small. But as kids do, she would grow out of those clothes. And so I really wanted a project that I really liked to do. And so that's how I turned to quilting. There wasn't the internet or YouTube videos like how there are now. So I didn't even know how to get started. We went one day to Joann's, and I found a pattern that I liked that was a quilt pattern. I had been looking through them for patterns for her, and I looked in the back, of the pattern book where they keep the crafts, and I saw one for a quilt. My great-grandmother had quilted a lot, but she wasn't around to show me how to do it. And so I was really on my own. I did not know where to start. And I had a basic Kenmore sewing machine, and I still have it. My mom bought it for me for my birthday one year when I was in my 20s, and it was very basic. And that's what I got started on. And that's how I got started. So I had no idea how it was supposed to turn out. I really thought that quilts were supposed to be like comforters, and they were supposed to be super poofy. And when mine wasn't, I was so disappointed. So I thought I would help clear up some of that mystery. And what exactly do you need to get started? And the quilt community is great about telling you, oh, this is the best and this is what I use, but you don't even know if you like this yet. So you don't want to do a big investment, or maybe you don't have a lot of money, which I didn't either when I got started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is the software. Ideally, so software would be pattern, fabric, and thread. Ideally, you would pick the pattern first, but maybe you found some fabric that you just fell in love with, right? It's a symptom of being a quilter, right? We all just love fabric, right? But if you're really, we need to go from the pattern. And patterns, they look like all sorts of things. They can come in an envelope like this. They can be in a book like this, where you can look at the quilts. They can be in a bigger pattern envelope like this. Or you can get them off the internet. This is my Socialites binder. This is a free pattern that I got from Fat Quarter Shop. I did have to buy the binder and the page protector. And these were my scraps from that quilt. And then I printed out the pattern pages and I put them in my binder. So find a pattern that you love, that you really like, because you and this pattern are going to be working together for a while. When you look at the pattern, and so this one's pretty straightforward on the back. So this is what it looks like on the front, and this is what it looks like on the back. A couple of things. This is the fabric that this pattern designer decided to use. That does not mean that that's what you need to use. You can pick whatever you want, because this is your art. This is going to be your art when you put this together. And so this fabric should be something that you want, and this pattern you should really love. And there's a lot of boring, easy patterns on there. And if you don't want to do boring, easy, then don't do it. Do something you love. Anyway, here is the front of the pattern, right? This is what you're going to see. This is what's going to attract you. On the back, there'll be a supply list, right? And this will tell you what fabric you need. and this will tell you the fabric you need to make it look like this. So on this one, you need 6 fat quarters for the ribbons and the bows, 16 fat quarters for presents, fat 1/8 for tags on long present, white 1 1/4 yards, and a middle border that's 1/3 yards, and an outer border and binding 1 1/2 yards. This quilt looks really good. You don't have to do the borders. If you don't want to, if you just want to plan on doing the front part, that's totally fine. This is your art, and you get to do it how you want to do it. So once you have your pattern and it shows your supplies on the back, then you get to fabric. And there's a lot of discussion on fabric. Should you only buy quilt store fabric? What about Walmart fabric? What about sheets? All of that. Well, here's the thing. It's your project. It's your budget. You pick what you like. So when I first started, I used Walmart fabric. I also used Joann fabric, whatever was cheap against the wall at the time. But I used a lot of Walmart fabric because it was cheap. They had a big selection and it was easy for me to get a hold of. And those are great quilts and it's great fabric, and there is nothing wrong with doing that. So if you really like it, you can buy it in yardage. So this is what I have in yardage. Or maybe you saw one of these, a fat quarter bundle, and you just fell in love with those colors. Then this is the fabric that you're working with. So usually you need several fat quarters, or you can use yardage instead. And then you need some kind of background. So common examples of background are white or black. You need some kind of background. The next part of software is thread. And quilters talk a lot about thread, and there's lots of time to learn about thread weights and different brands of thread and how that works. In general, I would suggest 100% cotton fabric and 100% cotton thread. So this is the thread that I have, but this is not the thread I started out with. I had a lot of Coats and Clarks, and that's just fine. It really comes down to, if you're using a machine, what kind of thread does your machine like? Maybe your machine doesn't like Orfil. Maybe it likes Coats and Clark better. Maybe you went to the thrift store and you found a bunch of Coats and Clark's thread cheap. Well, then Coats and Clark's is what you're using. I like cotton thread because I like at the end for quilts to be that squishy, comfy softness. And I feel like with cotton thread and cotton fabric, it all shrinks together. But that ends up being your personal choice. So after you have your pattern and your fabric and your thread, well, now you're like, okay, how do I turn this into a quilt? What do I do next? Okay, so you're all set. You have your fabric and your pattern and your thread, and you're ready to get going. What do you need next? Well, you need some hardware. The first thing you're going to need is an iron. No matter what anyone says, you do not need a fancy iron. You can get an iron at Walmart, at Target, or my favorite, the pawn shop. You can often get a really nice iron at a pawn shop that will work for you forever. I have a couple of pawn shop irons myself. Then you need something to iron on. So this is an ironing board that I use. It is a piece of wood with some legs that pop out, and you can iron right on this. Not a big deal, but you can get an ironing board at Walmart. Whatever you get that works for you and that you maybe use in your house for something else, that works. So you have an iron and an ironing board, and then you need rulers and a cutting mat. So this is my first ruler I had. I got this at Joann's. So I've had this ruler about 25 years, and it has been great. It's a really good length. It's 24 inches, but I have other rulers, other sizes. But it works great. Whatever works for you. This is a fun ruler that I have. And then you'll need a cutting mat. And so you can get a cutting mat at Joann's, at Walmart, on Amazon. This is an Olfa cutting mat I have. These are called self-healing cutting mats. You can rinse them with water to get the threads out. This one, it has grids on this line with measurements, and it's blank on the other side, so you can cut without measurements if you want. But I have a couple of cutting mats. This one is a great size. This is 12 by 18. So this is great if you're cutting fabric in front of the TV and you just need a small cutting mat to cut on. When I was first learning to quilt, I kept everything in a box, one medium-sized moving box. I kept my machine, all my fabric, my cutting supplies, it all fit in one box. You'll need something to cut the fabric with. There are lots of fancy rotary cutters, scissors, cutting systems. You can use your scan and cut if you have one. Any of those will work. So you'll want probably a size, I believe these are 9-inch shears. They don't have to be fancy. They don't have to be a fun purple. I have several pairs of scissors, and this is what you're going to use to cut out kind of big chunks of fabric. So when you're cutting clothes, you use scissors a lot, but when you're cutting quilts, these are like a secondary instrument. So the next thing you're going to want is a rotary cutter. Rotary cutters come in all shapes and sizes. I have a couple of others. So this one is a Fiskars from Joann's, I think it is. It's super lightweight. When your blade gets dull, you just get replacement blades. You don't replace the whole thing. This is a brand that they don't make anymore, but I love the weight of it. But there's lots of different ones. So you're going to want a rotary cutter. If cutting with the rotary cutter makes you nervous, which it does a lot of people, they do have gloves that you can use that help protect your hand from cutting. Knock on wood, I haven't cut myself with a rotary, but I have known people who have, and it's not great. So, but rotary, you use the rotary next to the ruler, and one like this can be switched to be left-handed, and it's how you get your accurate cuts. Okay, so another piece of hardware you're going to need is a seam ripper. Now, you'll probably get one that looks like this in your sewing machine. These are great. I have plenty of these. They do what needs to be done. They rip out your seams. When I'm piecing, I will rip out a seam if I felt like it was really important to the quilt that I get that right, but I don't always use it. But you still need to have one. And they have lots of fancy ones. This is one that I have with a wooden handle. It has a stiletto at the end. I got it on eBay. I got it on Etsy, and you can replace out the blade. This is good because if you use it a lot, the blade gets dull and you'll want to get another one. Don't forget, when you're looking for items like seam rippers or sewing supplies or sewing machines, don't forget things like thrift stores and pawn shops, and look around. Lots of people started sewing and they don't sew anymore. Maybe ask your friends or your family if they have a sewing machine that you could use, right? Because sewing machines, especially the old ones, they last forever. Some final thoughts here before we go. First of all, this is your artwork. You get to make it however you want. There are no quilt police, and if there are, they are not worth listening to. This is your art project. You make it how you want it to be. Pick a pattern that you like. It does not have to be a beginner-friendly pattern. Pick one that you like. You'll figure it out. You will learn more from messing up than you will from getting it right. You don't need a fancy sewing machine. You can have a very basic sewing machine. You can have $100 sewing machine. You get what fits with your budget and what you like. You don't even have to have a sewing machine. If you want to sew everything by hand, that is totally fine. Like use needle and thread, that will work too. Do what makes you happy. If you like fabric and other people tell you it's wrong, don't worry about it. Make it anyway, and then it is 100% your creation. All the fancy quilters that you saw, they had to start someplace too. They did not start out making these fancy perfect quilts. In the end, the quilts that you make will be loved by the people and the pets that you love, and none of them are going to judge what your mistakes are or where you messed up. You do something that you love to do, and that will be great. I would love to hear about what your creation and what you make, and feel free to tell me in the comments. Or if you're a longtime quilter and you have some of your own tips and tricks, feel free to share it with us in the comments. As always, I'm so glad you came to sit with me. Have a great rest of your day.